So I put on my leather jacket this morning and went out to dry the car, which is something that I've been doing recently as a ritual. When it rains in the morning, I go and dry the car. And I can recommend it actually because the car is actually rather clean. Um, it seems to be one way of avoiding washing the car periodically. I usually only do it about twice a year. And I was too lightly attired for the weather. The weather has cooled. I was too lightly attired. So I come back in. I'm thinking of going to the pub for my breakfast, and I'm undecided as to whether to drive or to walk. When I parked the car yesterday in the supermarket car park, I noticed that an Indian gentleman had parked very, very closely to my driver's door, and he was still there at his car when I arrived. And I looked at the gap, and I remarked that I said, "It's a good job I've lost some weight." And he looked at concerned, and said, "Well, see if you can get in, and otherwise I'll move the car." I don't think he had very much space on the other side either, but more than he'd left me. Um, and I squeezed and wriggled. It was really quite a squeeze and a wriggle to get down there, and wriggled in one bit at a time, and eventually disappeared inside the car, and off he went. And it was an interesting interaction. We chatted a little bit, but I don't think he completely locked in to my comments. He seemed somewhat taciturn, but friendly enough. And I thought it's nice to have one of the nice things about the Asian community, generally speaking, I think, is that they don't get, and not just, but particularly that they don't get involved in all the kind of niceties so much sometimes as my English brothers and sisters can sometimes do. When that overbearing niceness, when people are being polite to one another. I suppose it happens in their community, but I think perhaps it's less common, more of a direct dealing. In some ways, I do prefer that. I don't like public displays of any type, really. Although, obviously, I try and be as obliging as possible in all circumstances. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I indeed? But it comes to my mind as I was cleaning the car, lightly attired, it came to my mind that we live in a society, we live in a world of where a great deal of judgment is occurring lately. Different groups of people judging one another. I suppose mainly you would say there would be groups, or perhaps individuals judging one another also for their actions and inactions. And, I'm certainly responsible for using judgmental language and ideas sometimes when I consider the world before me. But really, it's just vanity, isn't it, when you think about it? And it's a waste of energy, actually, because things are what they are. And your perception of them is not that important. It comes to my mind that things have a spiritual, if things have a spirit nature, as I have come to believe, then we can see them more clearly for what they are. if we examine them from that, I don't know whether to call it a sort of third eye perspective, more of a feeling. We feel what they are. And that's helpful, because our perception can be more easily deceived than our, they call it spidey sense, don't they, sometimes, that a feeling that we have, which I think can be refined if we give it, if we acknowledge it and accept it and try to learn about it, like any other sense. Um, you could call it intuition, or you could call it the movings of the Spirit of God within you, if the Spirit of God does indeed reside within your soul, as I hope it does, and it should reside in the soul of everybody, of course, although that's not never going to be the case, I suppose, is it? But yes, there's a lot of, all that judgment. I wonder whether it's being helpful in the end. We just have to consider that that's what it's been, to me, very much a feature of the past. But kind of, I've noticed it really strongly post pandemic, sort of during and after the pandemic, and it seems to have stuck to some extent. And people have radicalized and they've spun to certain corners of their, ideological framework, from which they've started braying at the agora. I suppose no good will come of all this ultimately, because, well, it's in conflict with the love thy neighbour commandment, isn't it? And love thine enemies. There really is no excuse for braying at people unless they want to pretend that they're a donkey and they ask you to do it. I suppose that could be a justification.